Hey friends, it's Gina. Welcome to the Rebookery channel. Today I wanted to share with you guys some epiphanies that I have had here in the loveliest of snow days in my neck of the woods. I have had a full 4 days, plus we had a snow day last week, so about 4 or 5 full days of journaling and working on my Homebodies collection that I'm going to put in my Etsy store hopefully soon. And I know I've been posting a lot and I've been putting a lot of stuff on Instagram, and you guys, your comments are just awesome. So I want to kind of give you a little heads up as to where I'm going with this collection and what it's about. First thing I have to tell you is I have changed. There's something about this collection that has tapped into my artistic soul. I absolutely am in love with all 14 of the journals that I'm working on. I have another 10 more, but I think I'll wait for that and do a Homebodies part 2, just because I want to get these done. But the thing about this is, with this collection, is I think I have grown as an artist, as a journal maker, as a creator, as a thrifter, and I've really come to realize some things. So this collection has just been amazing for me, even though I'm not even close to being done. I only actually have one book done and it's not even bound yet. But I want to share with you some of the things that I have come across as I've been doing these journals, and just kind of show you some things that I'm doing a little bit differently. So first of all, the Homebodies collection is a collection of 14 different repurposed crafting, sewing books that I have found in my thrift stores and junk sales, yard sales, estate sales, all that good stuff. So they're all in that whole theme of, if you were to stay home rather than go out, which is what I like to do, what would you be doing? Well, you'd be knitting, you'd be crocheting, you'd be sewing, you'd be crafting, you'd be cutting, you'd be coloring, you'd be painting. So that's the theme for these journals. And as I started to do these journals, and as I started to go through my stash and pull out things I wanted to use in them, I really was torn. I was torn between, there are so many beautiful products out on the market, scrapbooking and crafting, and they're brand new and they're mass produced. And they're very enticing, very enticing. They're beautiful, they're colorful. But there was just something that was stopping me from getting started on these, and I was torn between, do I go out and get mass produced and all this other stuff, or do I use what I have and do I make do with the thrifty finds that I have or that I can find? And ultimately I came to this realization of who I am and who the Rebookery is, and it goes back to my whole thing of the Rebookery is repurposing bygone treasures into curious things, like taking bygone books and turning them into journals, or taking old sewing patterns that no one wants anymore, that are dirty and torn, and turning them into something that can be used again, giving new life to things that may have thought their life was over. And that is so me. So in this collection, I have really dug deep, and I've pushed my supplies, I've pushed my creativity, I've pushed my sewing abilities, and I've really pulled in all of those bits that could be thrown away, that could be discarded, that someone might think is junk, and I've really tried to incorporate them and make them useful and beautiful again. Now, I originally thought that I was going to go and do this collection, no brand new materials, no scrapbooking paper, nothing like that. But the thing is that because I use thrifted papers and I use old things and I don't use I don't do digital prints, although they are beautiful, and I'm not downing anybody who does use them. That's just not me. I don't want to put anything out there that isn't already there. So I don't do digitals. I don't do the tea dyed or the coffee dyed. So I had to have something that would balance out that old and give the books some structure and give them some stability. So ultimately I did choose to use some scrapbook paper and some cardstock. I also have decided in this journal making process that I've become a paper snob, and I'm really going to choose my scrapbook papers from here on out. I'm going to choose those wisely and not just pick up the cheapest brand or the cheapest kind just because they don't have the integrity that more expensive, better quality papers have. And so if I'm really going to marry the old and the fragile with the new, I really need to make sure that I'm using the highest quality. So that's a couple of things that I've come across. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm totally rambling, but I've had these epiphanies and I just wanted to share them with you. Okay, so this book I have been working on for the past couple of days, and this is the only one that I have close to being done. But I wanted to share with you some of the things that are on the inside of this and just share with you some of the changes that I'm making in my journal making process. Okay, so first of all, I am really trying to pare down how much I put in the journal, because as a journaler myself, I know that my journals bulk up really quickly, and you know, I don't want someone to be done with their journal because it's bulked up. So I've tried really hard to pare down, and I'm not putting as many pages in these journals, and I'm changing my thinking from quantity to quality. I'm trying to make a more high quality treasure than I am just chucking a whole bunch of papers in and things like that. So that's one of the differences. The other, another difference is I am going to make each one of these journals by themselves. In the past, I have kind of had an assembly line where I did one day of all covers and one day of all the insides of the covers and one day of signatures and one day of gluing and sewing. And I'm going to do that a little different this time. I'm spending all my time on one book and one book only. And each book is going to be individual. Each book is going to be unique. Each book is going to be, even though I've planned this out and I've written out I have so many pages in my journal. I need to show you my journal. I have all these pages of ideas and things I want to do. And each book, though, is going to be something that is purely one of a kind more so than my journals before. One of the things that I've been doing as I've been going through this Homebodies collection is I kind of started this little notebook as just a way to keep track of notes and things about crafts shows that I had been doing. This is kind of where I keep track of my months and what I have going on. So back here in the back, this is where I've kind of started a lot of my Homebodies planning. So these are all the books I've got that I've listed out I want to use, and the measurements, how many signatures. Then I've started sketching out like some page designs, what I want them to look like, what I want their functionality to be, you know, things I want to use in these books, possibilities that I want to do, some different, again, page sketches, and yeah. And I've had so much fun sketching these ideas out and doing measurements and you know, really planning it out, like how many signatures and how I want the signatures to work. So this has kind of been what I've been working in, and this has been a lot of fun. So then from that, I have started work on this particular journal. So I have 4 signatures in this journal, and this is not bound. So this is very raw right here. make sure that this is all in focus. So these pages, I'll just kind of pull out and show you. So I've done an exorbitant amount of sewing because this being the Homebodies, I've really just tapped into the whole sewing and needle crafting and stuff. And although I don't do any needle crafting, I do sew. So I literally have 3 machines set up. Each machine is set up for a different purpose. I have one that's for my free motion, one that's for decorative stitches, and then one's just for my utilitarian, going through very thick materials and things like that. I have totally taken over the kitchen, and in addition to my actual room that I'm in right now. So my family is just like really tired of seeing my felt and my fabric and my threads and my books and everything all over the place. Okay, so let me show you what I have in this journal. So again, I have to keep with the integrity of the modern scrapbook papers just to hold the books together. So I'm trying to incorporate those, like go every other one, but try to still stay really heavy on the thrifted papers and the pages that came out of these books. Now, this book that I'm working in, this Good Housekeeping See and Sew, this was a 1943 book. And the pages were damaged, so I had to cut off probably 2.5 inches of the pages. So I had to do quite a bit of maneuvering with those pages to get them to work. So I've really kind of tapped into my sewing terminology, and so this is some smocking, and I remember wearing smocked dresses when I was young, so I wanted to incorporate that. I've put some pockets in. This is so loaded with pockets, and then just kind of gone overboard on the sewing. So once I made this signature, I was like, okay, this is overload. There's too much pattern, too much busyness going on. So I had to go back and I had to add some blank paper. I need a place for your eye to rest. Plus, I also want you guys to have room to do your own journaling. So I tried to incorporate, every other one, have a busy page and then have a page that's more calm. But I wasn't able to do my normal type of gluing, which is where I go outside and I use my spray adhesive. It is -3 here today, and my glue won't set. So I had to come up with some better ways to put my papers together. And so when I use vintage papers, they are very thin. They are very fragile because they are the authentic, real deal. So I have to back them to make them stronger. Sometimes papers are okay by themselves, but a lot of times the papers I use need to be backed. So I had to come up with a way that I was able to do that without going out and using my spray adhesive. So my free motion stitching came into play here. And you can just kind of see that I have layers of paper, and then I have incorporated a pocket. This is very old. This is very old. But when I layer them up, they become thicker and stronger, and they can hold up in your journal. And then I just made a little booklet and just used some of the book pages, and then tucked this into this little pocket. All of my scraps that I would normally get rid of, I'm keeping and I'm using, which is something new for me too. I'm using a lot of the torn edges and the scraps, and this is a very rough and raw journal collection. So then here's a page. This is the end paper from the book, and you can see it's kind of damaged a little bit. I had to cut off the really bad damaged parts, but then I need a place for your eye to rest. And then this is a page from another sewing book. And people always ask, how do I get my pages so wide? Well, when I remove the pages from a book, if the book is wide, I remove them by pulling out the stitching in the signatures. So this only works if you have a book that has been stitched into the spine, not glued. So I have a nice long paper here. And then what I do is I can add more pages to it. I can glue them to something else. Like here I have glued a Dick and Jane book page too. And let me show you the condition of this Dick and Jane book. Look at this. So I found this at an estate sale back in October, and I have actually cleaned this up a lot. But this book has a lot of wear and tear. Now, you know, somebody might think, well, you can't use this book. And you might not be able to. I'm going to, because this is just a background page. This is just a page that I'm putting on top of this to add a little bit of integrity, to add a little bit of interest. And so I'm okay if there's rips and there's pin marks, and this is all these little brown spots and stuff. This is natural aging. So you're getting the real deal here. And then this just becomes a background for your journaling or your photos or whatever it is that you want to place on here. So that's, let's see, how does this go? That's gonna go into here. And then, yep, I think I showed you all of that. Okay, so there's one signature. So here's another one. So I have really been lucky lately, and my fabric, all of my fabric comes from thrift stores, fabric recycling stores, estate sales, yard sales, things like that. So I do not go to the big department stores and buy brand new fabric. It's beautiful, but that just kind of goes against what the rebookery is and the way I believe in repurposing things. So every stitch of fabric that you see has had a previous life. The only exception is my thread, just because a lot of vintage thread will have dry rot, and you have to be very careful when you sew with vintage thread, just because you don't want it to break. You know, if you're sewing just something that you don't need a lot of strength to, that's okay, you can use it. But that's the only exception. Is I do use, if I need a really heavy thread, I'll go out and buy some heavy thread. But everything else should be, you know, it can be recycled, repurposed, all that good stuff. So I've been really lucky with finding a lot of quilting material and quilt blocks. So I've tried to incorporate as much of that into these journals as possible. So this right here, I love this page. My idea was, I want this to be a working journal. I want this to be a journal where you practice, where you get to play around with whatever your homebody craft is. So my idea was to have some fabric pages, and this I think is used with cross stitch or something like that. I'm, again, not a very good needle worker, so I don't know, but this is an actual piece of fabric, and I turned this into a page. And so what I did on here was I just stitched in a piece of quilting material so that you could use it as a pocket. In the pocket, I've got a couple of little journaling cards. These were greeting cards that I just trimmed off the top, and I think it was for like a wedding. And then what I've done is I've now given you a blank space to practice your needleworking. And so to kind of give you a little prompt, I put a piece of fabric right here, and I just stitched on a button. And then I put a piece of felt here. So this is an old sweater that I had that I felted. And then I just tied it. When you can pull this out and it'll come loose. And then I've attached a needle, because I want you to be able to use this and to be able to practice your stitches or practice your button sewing as you're working in this journal. So that's something that I want to try to incorporate into each one of the journals. And then again, just lots of pockets using the original pages, pulling out all kinds of pages from different sewing books that I have, that you can use these as ephemera, or you can use them as your background pages. Just tuck that in. And then wanted you to have some blank space, so some ledger paper, and there's so many pockets in this journal. Envelopes. I think I told you a while ago, I scored a huge bunch of envelopes, so I just have tons of them, and they make a great blank journaling space because they're layered, they're nice and thick, but then you also can tuck stuff in. So This is just a journaling card I made of 2 of the book pages glued together, and then took another book page, stuck it on top with a little bit of trim. So that'll be tucked in. And then this is, again, having to have the integrity. So I have some really good scrapbook paper here. And I've got this as a fold out. And so this is a gigantic fold out. I don't know if you can see this or not. So you're getting like, would be like this. So you open it up, there's a space here, there's a space here, and then you open it up, there's a space here. And then check this out. So this is a little pocket that I made, and I'm using, let's see if I can pull this out here. I'm using a transparency. So I've got a transparency that I sewed here, cut out some little cutouts here, and then here's a tag. And then this is a cool little thing. This came off of the scrapbook paper. It's a quote from Laura Ingalls Wilder, whom I love. Her ability to be thrifty and repurpose, and just, you know, the way she grew up, and she got a penny and an orange and a candy cane for Christmas, and that was like the best Christmas ever for her. So yeah, I love Laura Ingalls Wilder, and I think the way she wrote her books, where she wrote on yellow paper, and she wrote from top to bottom, side to side, so margins to margins, front and back. And that's how she started to write her little house books. And I just think that, because she didn't want to waste anything, and I just think that is just awesome. So some trim, some book page, some ruffles, because this page is talking about ruffle, and then here's the back of that. There's another signature. Just have some little papers in there, some nice scrapbooking paper, little pocket over here. And I took, so like all of my pages that I took from, you know, the book covers and stuff, any of the papers that I could salvage, I literally just have them laying in a pile, and then I just go and pull. So each journal will have a collection of all of the different Homebodies pages. And so this is a piece of scrapbook paper. Here's some book page. Oh yeah, so I think I have a little pocket in here. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, sorry. So here's just a Dick and Jane page. And I just took some offcuts that I had from some die cut that I had made. Oh, I think it was this right here. I had to cut this off of a page. It was too long. And so I just sewed it on here, and then just stitched around this Dick and Jane book page. And it just tucks in this little pocket right here. And then, hang on, I was already here. Okay, so then I have this little, it's like a checkbook cover. I just put a little hexagon, got a little clip of some stitching illustrations, some lace, fold this over, and then check this out. So this is some ledger paper, and I just pulled the whole thing out here. And I just took the ledger paper, folded it down so that it would be the height of my book. And then it had this little perforated edge here, so I just glued that. So I took some wallpaper, and I just cut out a circle, and then did some of my free motion stitching, stitched across the top. So you can put whatever you want here, and then this is just kind of folds over. And then took that circle, cut it in half, and put it over here with a little bit of some fabric that, it's pretty old fabric. So that's kind of a fun page. Slide that back in. And you can see that, like I said, the theme of this is like, it's very raw. This is what I would call a raw journal. Like the edges and everything are tattered, and I'm loving that, especially with having my 3 sewing machines out, because this is something that, like this stitch right here, this is something that I would not have done before, but now that I have my 3 machines out and I just have one designated for each type of stitching, I'm having so much fun just playing around with the different stitches. and really kind of going back to why am I stitching it? Oh, I'm stitching it to put the two things together, and that's the most foundational part. And once I embraced that, then I was like, oh, well, if all I'm doing is trying to put these two things together or these three things together, then it's just utilitarian, and I just push it through my machine, and I don't have to worry about what it looks like, because that's not the point. The point is to hold them together. I don't know. It's just a total shift in my thinking. Okay, so this is where I got kind of fancy schmancy. So this was a piece of ledger paper, big piece of ledger paper. Let me see. I think I have one. One night I was just playing around with my free motion foot on my sewing machine. I just took some ledger paper and I just collaged a bunch of fabric on here, and then I had to practice. I tell you what, if you have never, for those of you that know how to free motion stitch, oh my gosh, you are my heroes, because this is tough, and I have injured myself several times because it's a little scary when that machine gets going fast. Anyway, so I have a bunch of these, and I've turned them into some journal pages. So what I did was I just took it and I folded it so that I have a pocket. And then these are like pockets within pockets. So these are kind of cool. So in this pocket, I just have a piece of book page from one of the Homebodies books. And then I cut out a page from an Afghan book. And this was the actual Afghan. Just put a little trim right here. So that goes in the front pocket. Over on this side, have a book page. Did some free motion. Another book page, which, you know, this just makes a beautiful background for whatever you want your artwork to be. And then just some old fabric. So then I had some space over here, and I had to kind of piece it together. So I took a little greeting card. I just stitched it in. So now you've got a flap. And then over here, you've got a pocket. So in this pocket, I've got this little piece of paper that stuck in there with some trim. All right, hang on, I'm not done yet. So then I've got inside here, you've got a pocket. So this is this beautiful page that came from the book. And the author had written this about sewing, and this was back in 1943. And so I wanted to keep this intact and keep it with the book. And then I took a tag from, this was my daughter's shirt from a million years ago, and I've just held on to this tag forever. And I love that it's modern, and I mixed it with this 1943 little letter. Then this was another book page. I sewed it together. And then right here, there was a thimble on the back of this page. And I wanted that thimble to show through, so I just cut a hole, and then I did some free motion stitching, and I actually covered it with a transparency, so you could paint on this, and then this will stay protected. So that goes in this pocket. Then over here, this pocket is a page from one of the Homebodies books. This was on quilting. I took a page of some of my favorite wrapping paper and just kind of wrapped it around, put a little Rolodex card here, did some stitching with some fabric, and this makes a journaling card, so we'll tuck that in. And then the back of this looks like this. So here is all of the fabric that I've kind of collaged on here. You can glue onto this, you can add photos to this, you can stitch onto this. And then over here, this side, so again, I came up short and I needed to piece it together. So if you remember, I have the little greeting card on the back. So I have this piece of, and I think this is for cross stitch. And those of you that cross stitch, I'm sure you know what it's called, but it's just a piece of paper that, or a piece of fabric that you would use to cross stitch. And I just stitched it on here. And then it's the back side of that pocket. So I think this is just a fun page. Like, you could spend a lot of time just opening up those pockets and finding out what's inside. So this was a gigantic piece of ledger paper that, again, I needed a resting place for your eyes. So I just took it, folded it, made it a little thicker, added some book page. This became a pocket with a little tag that I have in there. And then I had to piece this over here. So this is some old fabric that became a pocket, and then these are just some pages from some knitting and sewing magazines. Stuck those in. And then, let's see. Okay, so this one, this is some old wallpaper. Just did some stitching, and then I stitched it to a calendar page. So people, again, are always asking, how do you make your pages wider? You have to piece them together. You're going to have to do some gluing and some stitching. So that's what I did here to make my page wide enough. So now you have blank spaces to do your journaling. And then the last page in this signature was a piece of cardstock and some scrapbooking paper that I pieced together. And on this side, I sewed it to an original book page with some quilting scraps on the edge. And then on this side, I pieced together the scrapbook paper, tucked in a little envelope, and then this is just some pictures from one of my Homebodies books. I think this was on knitting or crocheting, and I just made a little booklet with some trim. And this is the back. Oh, and on the back, another little pocket right here. And then this is just a piece of paper from the book. So yeah, like, I just feel like this journal is like going to Disneyland, because there's going to be so much stuff for you to do. Like, I feel like you could get lost in all of the nooks and crannies in this journal. And guys, this is just journal number 1. I have 13 more of these to go, and I'm just super, super excited to get them going. So having said that, and having showed you this and rambling for lots and lots of time here, my plan for this is I'd like to be able to do the Homebodies a release around the end of February, 1st of March. I can't give you a definitive date, because the thing is, guys, I'm treating each one of these individual, and I'm taking my time, and again, I'm doing quality versus quantity, just because I am loving each and every stitch and piece of paper and piece of fabric and trim that goes into this, and I want you to feel the love when you purchase this and it becomes yours. I want you to feel all of that love. So it's going to take me a while. Yeah. In the meantime, I will keep you updated. I will absolutely keep posting things on Instagram, and I will let you guys know closer to the time. Of course, it also depends on how many snow days we have too. I mean, it's not even the middle. Well, it is actually the middle of January. We've already had 2 snow days, so who knows? If I get a bunch of snow days, I might finish these up sooner. All right, my friends, I hope you have a great rest of the day. I hope you are safe and warm wherever you are, and I hope you guys do something creative. Have a lovely day.